Welcome back now to our Friday segment, Movie Spotlight, where we review some of the latest releases at the Korean box office and online. And joining me now in the studio, our esteemed film critics, Jason Bechervaise and Darcy Paquet. Gentlemen, it's great to see you as always.
Yeah, great to be here, Jangho. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Okay, so last weekend was, of course, the long Chuseok holiday weekend, and cinemas were quite busy, particularly with the first film that we're going to be talking about today, pulling in over 3 million viewers. That is Confidential Assignment 2, International, or Gongjo 2 International, to give it its Korean name.
It's got a very original title.
So, Jason, lots of sequels this year, and this is another one then.
Yeah, more on that shortly. But yeah, this is a sequel to the 2017 hit Confidential Assignment, or Gongjo, directed by Kim Sung-hoon, that performed actually very well in one of the other busy periods for the multiplexes, the Lunar New Year. Now, in that film, Hyun Bin's character is an officer of a special investigation team in North Korea, and he teams up with a team in the South to catch a nefarious criminal played by the late Kim Joo-hyuk. Now, in the sequel, it's helmed by a different filmmaker, Lee Suk-hoon, who made The Pirates and Himalayas. The North Korean detective is basically sent on a new mission to track down the leader of another North Korean criminal gang, this time acted by Jin Seung-gyu from The Outlaws, who manages to escape custody in New York while in transit. This is the opening sequence, and then enters South Korea using a fake passport. So, of course, Hyun Bin's character teams up once again with a South Korean detective, played by Yoo Hai-jin, to take down this gang. Now, we've got Daniel Henney as well as the FBI agent, who also joins the team, and Yoon A as well returns, and she is also involved.
Okay, so Darcy, there's been no shortage of films this year dealing with inter-Korean relations, actually. There was Hunt, 645 as well. But this feature goes international, as the title suggests. It brings in the role of the US to the story. So instead of an inter-Korean cooperation story, this is a trilateral one now with the US. Does this new dynamic work, Darcy? What do you think of the film?
Well, I mean, I guess in some ways it was, the direction that they could go, And it is a little bit unusual to have a film that, is focused on kind of north-south tensions or relations, and then to include the U.S. in a significant way. But it's not very serious, is it? The film, I didn't feel a lot that it was new in it, even though in some ways, objectively, they have this big opening sequence in New York. It's on a bigger scale. In that sense, it is kind of taking on new territory, but it did feel very familiar if you've seen the original film.
Right.
It's pretty much the same thing.
Right, okay. So, Jason, what do you think?
It's a very well packaged film. It's produced by Yoon A of JK Films. He's known as a hit maker in Korea. He's a filmmaker as well. He produced the Himalayas. He made Hyundai, Ode to My Father. He knows what the audiences want, and so. This year we're seeing films that are certainly well produced, and that was also true of the Outlaws sequel, The Roundup, which was not only starring Ma Dong-seok, he also produced it. People are familiar with, obviously, the original film. It has a lot of humor in the film. I think some people may underestimate the power of comedy, and it goes a long way here. It's all very familiar, as Darcy said. I mean, the climatic sequence is so predictable. Of course, I'm trying not to give away too much here, but I literally shouted out in the cinema, I mean, this is going to happen, and sure enough, it happened. It kind of reminded me of Shiri in a way. You got this kind of, this liquid explosive, or rather, other kind of poison. But yeah, it's all been done before. But you've got Yoon A looking very attractive, very pretty. You've got Hyun Bin doing his North Korean dialect. But it works. This is the thing. It's very effective.
That was going to be my question.
Because I went to see it on, I think it was like a school cultural day, and so it's full of these high school students, and they were just coming out saying, "너무 재밌었어요." It's really good fun, and it's attracting both young and old. It's got the melodrama in there. You got these these scenes that take place in this apartment, and you got the family, and you've got the interactions, the romance, the humor. It's all there, along with the the local backdrop. And so it's a classic localized blockbuster.
Gosh, I guess I was in the wrong screening. I was in a screening with a lot of old people, and it was like completely silent. Nobody was laughing at the jokes.
Wow.
So it was a little bit depressing.
Okay, so perhaps it's splitting audiences then, but still 3 million admissions. That's pretty impressive considering the industry at the moment. Why do you think it is connecting with audiences, Jason? What does it say about the industry at the moment? That perhaps they're looking for something more familiar?
Yeah, no, the industry's it's a complex picture for sure. Certainly sequels are working at least to some extent. Obviously the Roundup and now this film. And then you have the Hansan, which is the Warring Currents prequel. And Korean films have been known for their originality, and it hasn't kind of gone down the franchise route. That certainly you do have franchises in Korea, but the industry's not reliant on franchises. The Hollywood very much is, and I think part of the problem is that cinema. A lot of the focus at the moment is on the prices of tickets. And how they've become more and more expensive. I read this interesting article that compared it to the price of jjajangmyeon, and how the increase is quite similar actually over the years. But obviously, jjajangmyeon is that kind of base price is now a lot cheaper than a cinema ticket.
Right.
They've almost doubled since I got here. So I think as a result, people are being very selective with what they're choosing to watch, and sequels they know what they're going to get.
Sure.
We'll have to wait and see what happens over the next few months. But hopefully we'll have some other hits that are not big budget films necessarily.
Sure. I guess in the US they have the Big Mac index. In Korea, I guess it's now the jjajangmyeon index. Right. So we'll leave it there for Confidential Assignment 2 International. Let's move on to our second film, a smaller independent film that has had success on the festival circuit. It's a drama called Kim Min-young of the Report Card, or 성적표의 김인영 in Korean. It won the grand prize at the Jeonju Film Festival in 2021, so there's quite a bit of acclaim that comes with it. Darcy, can you tell us what it's about? I understand that this film, like so many Korean indie films, focuses on young people.
Yeah, it's basically about two friends, like two young women, Jang-hee, who's played by Kim Joo-ah, and then Min-young, who's played by Yoon A. And they turned 20. They've taken the university entrance exam, and they're part of a poetry club together. They had another friend who was part of their circle who's now in the U.S. But things are changing. Min-young is attending a university. Jang-hee seems to have given up, and most of the film takes place in Min-young's apartments in Seoul, where Jang-hee comes and spends some time with her, and there's not a lot that happens in the film, but they're great conversations in the film, and the characters are really interesting. It's directed by two young filmmakers, Im Ji-sun and Lee Jae-eun, who are from the Korean National University of Arts. And despite the fact that I think that we have a lot of films that feature similar characters and that do focus on young people, to me this one felt quite different.
Right.
It has had this festival success. After Jeonju, it went to Rotterdam, and then Hong Kong, Hawaii. So it's traveled a bit around the world.
Sure. As you said, the subject of friendship has been tackled before, especially in indie films. Jason, Darcy said this feels different. Does it stand out for you too? What do you think of the film?
Yeah, no, I love how it's structured. Because when I started watching it, because I hadn't seen this film. It's been around for a little while. It's been a film I missed, and so I was watching it yesterday, and I thought it reminded me instantly of Take Care of My Cab, because in that film you have these friends who kind of as they grow up, they kind of drift apart. And so I kind of imagine what I thought was going to happen is a very similar film, but in fact it's really different. And as Darcy mentioned, a lot of it's set in this sort of Seoul apartment, and they're just talking to each other. But you can see that together that they don't have the friendship that they once had. Min Young is very much fixated on getting her grades changed. And her friend, meanwhile, is not really doing much, and they're having these conversations, but clearly the conflicts are arising, and we are introduced to the characters in like the first half of the film, but a lot of the kind of the what we learn about the characters comes later, and we don't have that kind of dramatic moment that you so often have in conventional films or even in indie films. And so in terms of the structure, I really admired the film. It felt very, very innovative. And so it was really well written. I mean, it's quite poetic as well in terms of, because I watched it with subtitles, but I was listening to the Korean, and I really liked the dialogue.
Sure. And Darcy, you said it stood out for you. What about it worked?
I know. I mean, as a filmmaker, it takes a bit of self-confidence to put forward a film where not a lot happens, and then you rely so much on dialogue and on character. And the fact that this is so successful in doing that, I think, is really exciting. And I mean, certainly as you're watching this, it gives you a lot to think about in terms of, young people in Korea today and what they face and what, trying to make some meaning out of life and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also kind of asks, what it is to be a Korean, and how the culture affects you, and your character. And in that sense, it's a very honest film. It really resonated with me.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that more people discover it. We're at the time of year where we traditionally get a lot of small releases, like independent releases. A lot of them come out in the fall. And so it has the potential to be overlooked, but it is, really well reviewed, and I think people who watch it will probably talk about it. So hopefully some word of mouth will help.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So if you're listening to this podcast, please go and see it.
Sure. I feel the English title is perhaps a little
clunky. It's a little weird.
It wasn't one of your translations, Darcy, was it?
No.
Okay. Just wanted to check. But yes, it sounds like a compelling work. It's called, once again, Kim Min-young of the Report Card. And that's where we're going to leave it for Movie Spotlight this week. Jason, Darcy, thank you as always for your reviews, and have a great weekend.
You too.
Yeah, you too.